The peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine have failed. That is because the Ukrainians and United States want ceasefire and Russians want peace deal. The main difference is that ceasefire is temporary and the peace deal is a more of a long-term solution. But before we go into the depth of these differences and what each side want, first let me just ask you to smash that like button, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Like I said, the peace negotiations that happened in Istanbul, which is kind of ironic because that's where the first peace negotiations happened that almost went through. But then Boris Johnson told Zelensky to say no deal, and Macron said to Putin, he visited Kremlin, he said to Putin, no deal. But it's ironic because 3 years later, pretty much, or I believe it's 2 years later, it was around 2022. So pretty much 2 years later, we have new peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine going on again in Istanbul. The main reason why it fall apart is basically because each side wants something different. They at least agreed on prisoners exchanges for now. So it seems like it's a step in the right direction. After that, there was the phone call between President Trump and President Putin for 2 hours. But in reality, the problem is that both sides want something different. The Ukrainians and United States want ceasefire. They want immediate ceasefire that would be temporary for like 30 days or 60 days. But most likely the Russian side is afraid that the Ukrainians would just use this time to rearm again. They used this same tactic during the Minsk Accords, which were agreed upon during the 2014 coup, and afterwards there were the Minsk Accords that were only used to basically rearm Ukraine and prepare them for more war. And so Russians might be afraid that temporary ceasefire would only mean that the other side, the Ukrainians, would try to rearm again and try to basically prepare for next stages of restarting the war again, which is something that they don't want. On the other hand, the Russians, they have a quite high demands. They obviously want the territory that they already conquered, starting with Crimea, that they annexed in 2014, and then all of the regions that they conquered during the war, starting the war in 2021. All of these regions they want annexed and normalized as a full part of Russia. That is one high demand that they have. But another high demand they also want the regions that are still in Ukrainian hands. They want regions that are ethnically Russian, but they are still part of Ukraine. They haven't conquered them yet. And so you know that Zelensky famously said that the Ukrainian army won't leave back their own territory. That is crazy. He said this after these talks. That is because the Russians have a demand to basically get more territory, even more than they conquered. That is one of the reasons why there is no peace deal yet. That is because the Russians' demands in this regard are quite high. One of the other demands that the Russians have is that they want the NATO troops to leave their borders. And when we say NATO troops, we are obviously just talking about American troops. You know, the United States' Marines, or I'm not quite certain if they are necessary Marines, but the American troops that are in countries that border Russia. We are especially talking about Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and one other country that does not border Russia directly, but borders Black Sea, where Crimea is located, that is Romania. All of these countries should see withdrawal of American troops in the nearby future, in the short-term future. This is quite a high demand, as it signals from the Kremlin that they are over the expansion of NATO. But when it comes to all of these demands together on paper, this is something that the White House is willing to agree upon. This is something that the Americans are willing to agree to. Not just Trump, but there's been a discussion with a senator who also suggested that this thing is on the table and it is very likely to happen. So we will see withdrawal of these American troops from these countries. For example, some of the aristocrats in Poland, some of the political leaders in Poland have been heard publicly that they might pursue to get their own nuclear weapons. That is because if these NATO troops, and when we say NATO troops, we mean American troops, if these American troops leave, they feel a little bit exposed. They feel like they might be more vulnerable, and so they might seek the possibility of getting nuclear weapons, which would definitely well, strategically speaking, it does make sense. Historically speaking, it does make sense. Russia has been quite brutal when occupying Poland during the post-war era, post-World War II era, but also during a liberation, during the World War II era, there have been some quite horrific scenes. The Poles and the Russians, they don't really like each other, even though I cannot tell them apart, but they don't really see eye to eye. And so from a military strategic points, it might make sense. There are other parts of this so-called peace deal that the Russians are proposing. It's not a ceasefire again. Ceasefire and peace deal have a different legal, they are different under the law, there are different things, and the main biggest difference is the fact that ceasefire is temporary. We already talked about this, and peace deal is more of a long-term solution. Guys, I'm not a lawyer, but this difference is quite crystal clear to everybody. And so the peace deal that the Russians are proposing, there are other parts of this as well, which is obviously normalizing trade between all respected counterparts, most specifically normalizing trade between Russia and the United States. Russia is a big exporter of several different things, mainly energy exporter, but also other stuff, and not having access to European markets and not having access to American markets definitely hurt them. It's definitely more beneficial for them to have a normalized trading relationship with their Western partners. And so this is a relatively big deal for the Russians, but it is a relatively easy thing to agree on from the American and Ukrainian perspective. One of the things that we did not talk about yet is that one of the spokesmen in Russia, one of the Ministry of Foreign Relationships, one of the high senior officials there, said that there are basically two camps. On one side are the American and Russians who want relatively quick resolution and quick peace deal and end to this war, and on the other side are the Europeans and Ukrainians who seem to on paper seem to seek ceasefire, but tends to prolong this war. But we also have to mention that from the perspective of Ukraine, from the perspective of Europeans, it is very unlikely that they would be able to carry this war without the Americans. It's almost unimaginable, especially because the burden, the financial burden, and the military equipment burden that this would pose on the Europeans is something that they most likely wouldn't be able to carry out on their own without the Americans. And so it is very unlikely that if the Americans would walk out the table and stop supplying Ukrainians with weapons and money, that the Europeans would be able to just fill in. That's something that is very, very unlikely. This won't most likely happen. And so hopefully I am very optimistic that we might see near end to this horrific war that has taken life of many, many young men and many civilians as well. There have been a lot of cruelty in the beginning of the war, a lot of war crimes committed, and so hopefully this will be over soon. Now, with all of this being said, thank you so much for watching this video so far. Make sure to smash that like button, make sure to smash that subscribe button, check out the videos here, there, and everywhere. And as always guys, I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, bye bye.